this is much bigger than about persecuting an innocent man like President Trump. This is about trying to take down the United States of America and damage our country past the point of no return. And that's what's really troubling here. If they can do this to President Trump on a total sham, bogus charge that there's no crime he's completely innocent of in the first place, but it's besides past the statute of limitations. A state can't bring a federal charge, and it's total lawlessness. But if they can do that to him, they can do that to anyone. And so that's the real troubling thing here. But I think ultimately this will mark a historic day when America does begin its resurgence as the greatest nation on earth, because people are waking up, they're seeing the corruption, and they're not going to stand for it anymore. They're galvanizing for the truth, for justice, equal justice under the law, and that will ultimately win in this case and overall for the country.
Right. And there is another way of looking at it, which is that Donald Trump is the first American president or former president to be treated as a criminal, to be charged with a crime. And that is pretty humiliating.
Well, that's what they do in third world countries. And it is humiliating for the United States, once the greatest nation on earth, to be acting like a run-of-the-mill dictatorship, to be acting like the Soviet Union, of the same people who screamed for 7 years now about Russia, 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 while they've been behind the scenes turning us, transforming us into the Soviet Union. Well, this is a show trial. That's exactly what this is.
Wait, isn't a run-of-the-mill dictatorship, isn't that rather when someone doesn't accept the result of an election in the way that Donald Trump still hasn't accepted?
Are you talking about Hillary Clinton?
Well, hang on a minute. Donald Trump still hasn't accepted the result of the 2020 election. Now, that is the sort of thing that happens in dictatorships.
No, the thing that happens in dictatorships and like the Soviet Union or like Iraq with Saddam Hussein getting 100% of the vote, those are the hallmarks of rigged and fraudulent elections. And when states change their laws without going through the state legislatures and do completely arbitrary rules using COVID as an excuse to stuff the ballot box and use mail-in voting, which has been banned in France since 1975, that is a lawless election. And President Trump will never stop talking about it. And the American people know it. In fact, 32% of Democrats believe that cheating affected the 2020 election. So the American people know. He's not going to stop speaking the truth about it. But if contesting the results of an election was a crime, Hillary Clinton would be in jail. The Democrats would be in jail. That's what they do. They've done for decades. And so it's completely ridiculous to try to criminalize President Trump's free speech, his constitutional rights to contest a very fraudulent election, which is all he ever did after 2020.
But, I mean, Donald Trump is being investigated for trying to influence the election in Georgia. I mean, that's just one other investigation that's going on. But that was an attempt to influence the election in Georgia.
No, actually, the attempt to influence the election is happening right now in New York, in Georgia, in D.C. This is election interference. Why would they need to go after Donald J. Trump if he wasn't leading in the polls? They wouldn't. And this is why they're doing it. So this is your election interference. All President Trump ever did was wanted free and fair votes to count, only legitimate votes to count, not ones that are recorded on camera being stuffed in the ballot box, which we have mountains of evidence of in Georgia and many other states. So the truth is going to ultimately prevail here. President Trump is going to continue to fight that, but it's clearly obvious that they wouldn't be going after him if he wasn't right, if he wasn't leading in all the polls, and if he wasn't going to win yet again in 2024.
And another reality is that he's also being investigated over instigating violence at Capitol Hill, of inflaming the crowds. He may face more charges for that, inciting insurrection. Many people would say a more serious charge. That is, undermining American democracy.
Well, I know you don't have the First Amendment over there, sadly, but we do have it in this country still. And what President Trump urged Americans to do on that day was to go peacefully and patriotically, let your voices be heard. And there was probably over 1 million people that day, a very peaceful crowd. And so what President Trump always urged was for people to be peaceful. And we know we've had countless numbers of MAGA rallies. We just had one in Waco, Texas. It's gatherings of tens of thousands of people. They're always peaceful. And so there are investigations going on about who was instigating that violence, but it certainly wasn't President Trump.
Which one of the investigations are you most worried about?
We're not worried about any of them because President Trump's completely innocent. I mean, President Trump has withstood 7 years now of false smears, attacks. They spied on his campaign. They tried to frame him for collusion with Russia when it was actually Hillary and the Democrats. I mean, they've tried everything in the book, and now they're rewriting the book. They're rewriting crimes, inventing them out of thin air, first in New York, and I'm sure they're pursuing them in other places. Taxpayer funded, by the way, election interference. But we're not worried because President Trump has always acted in the bounds of law. He's always taken his oath to the Constitution very seriously. And the only reason they're going after him is because he does take it seriously, because he represents the American people and he fights on their behalf. The corrupt ruling class, they cannot stand that because they're getting rich on the demise of our country. They're opening our border. They're destroying our energy independence. They're starting endless wars in Ukraine, and they're getting rich on top of it. That is why they're so afraid of him, because he puts all of that to an end when he gets back in the White House.
Isn't the problem here that can you really have a man who doesn't accept the result in a democracy of the last election? Can you really have that man stand in the next election?
Of course you can, because we have someone who is fighting for the American people. If we don't have free and fair elections, we don't have a country. And so, again, I don't know why you're not asking this question of Hillary Clinton, of plenty of Democrats who objected to the Electoral College vote of Donald J. Trump. I mean, Jamie Raskin, one of the impeachment leaders for the Democrats, objected to President Trump's election in 2017. It's completely absurd. President Trump followed the law. He also followed the facts. And there's mountains of evidence of election fraud. There's more and more coming out to this day. And we haven't fixed our elections. That's something that we're very keenly focused on. Look no further than Arizona and that sham of election in 2022. We need to fix our elections, and President Trump is the man that's going to do it. And that's why they're so afraid of him as well. They don't want to let the American people decide who rules them. But
where is
they
the
have
evidence?
A problem. The American
where is
Constitution.
But where is the evidence? Sorry to interrupt you, but where is the evidence that the 2020 election was not fair, that was not free and fair? Where is it? I haven't seen it.
Why did Wisconsin ban drop boxes after the 2020 election, finding them unconstitutional? Those were added outside the state legislature.
But where is the court? Where is the court that has determined that the election was unfair?
They threw out cases for lack of standing. There are still pending cases in Georgia of poll workers in Fulton County who'd worked there for decades and saw stacks of mail-in ballots with no creases that were fraudulent votes. We're still waiting for that case to be heard, if you can believe it, Mark, all these years later, because they know the truth and the law is not actually on their side. There's mountains of evidence. I mean, 2,000 mules, just one aspect of the cheating that went on with stuffing. It's on camera, Mark. It's on camera.
No, well, I haven't heard the court ruling anywhere in the States that said it's unfair. Just final point. You say that this could play well politically for you. Some are arguing that this is exactly what the Democrats want, that they want to take on Donald Trump at the next election. And if Donald Trump is a convicted criminal, so much the better for the Democrats. That's what some people are arguing.
I think it's preposterous. It's disinformation. If they wanted to face him, they wouldn't have to try to arrest him. They'd let him win the primary. He's already winning. He's already going to win the primary. And clearly now his poll numbers are even coming up because everything they do backfires on them. But they wouldn't have to touch anything. If they're so keen on facing him, then get out of the way. But they're not. It's total lies. It's just what they said in 2016 as well. They don't want to face him because he's the leader of the biggest political movement in American history. There are probably 100 million Americans that will support him in 2024. That is not something that they want to stand up against.
Why do the polls show that most Americans actually support 61% of Americans actually support the indictment against him?
Which poll is that?
It was a poll that was just on CNN last night.
CNN. We have very reliable source. So you can get a poll to say whatever you want. We've been polling this issue. We've seen it in the numbers. Independents, 70% know this is politically motivated. And you have to look no further from what Alvin Bragg said. He said before he got into office that he was going to go after Trump. Same with Letitia James. Same with all of these corrupt prosecutors. That is clear what the agenda is, and the American people see right through it. And that's why his support is rising, and more Americans are waking up just to how corrupt this country has become.
Okay, Liz Harrington, appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed.
Great to be with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.